Hello and welcome to AXSChat. Today I'm dialing in from Argentina where I'm at the Global Disability Summit. Yes, you can call me a show-off. I'm delighted to welcome Juliette Burton, who I met at another conference. Juliette was speaking at the BDF annual conference, and I was most amused and also impressed by the humour and the content and the ability that you have to essentially bring levity to something that is quite often very serious subjects, and I think humour is a great icebreaker. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into comedy and everything else and the sort of topics that you talk about?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you in what you say, though, that comedy for me, I feel passionately about it because laughing together, it helps us feel less alone about no matter what we're laughing about. And for me, it's a way of finding light in the darkness. So being funny about my mental illness and mental health conditions is a way of surviving them. Because if we're finding the funny within them, if the butt of the joke is either my conditions or the stigma that surrounds my conditions, the stigma that I encounter, then it's a way of defusing the situation. It's a way of breaking the tension. And for me, like performing comedy to audiences that maybe have no experience of mental illness is equally as important as performing comedy to people who have experience of mental illness and need to know they're not alone. And it's a way of making it more accessible, breaking down barriers, increasing understanding, and in a way that's fun and informative and entertaining. But it's also important, I feel, that you make the distinction between somebody who is creating comedy through lived experience, and therefore they have an informed opinion, they have an informed perspective, they are accountable for what they're saying, and their intention is always to help people understand where they're coming from. I mean, you ask how I got into comedy, and I used to be a journalist, so I used to work magazines and newspapers, and whilst I loved that, it was all about communication for me. And when the recession hit, I found it harder to get work as a journalist, and started doing more voiceover work because I worked for BBC Radio. That led me to doing more writing, which led me to do more comedy, and I very quickly realised that if I wanted to make people listen about the harder topics, like my more dark experience of mental health, I mean, I use the word dark, but perhaps difficult to understand, less common experiences, which I'm sure we'll come on to. If I wanted them to listen, then if I was making them laugh at the same time as telling them about what was going on for me, then they would be more likely to listen for longer. So it's a way of making it more accessible. And also, for me, the more I performed, the more I hear other people's stories after my shows, and that has absolutely helped me double down on this decision, with comedy being my ultimate ambition, my ultimate aim. I love making people laugh. Moreover, I love helping people feel like they're not alone. And there's so many people who have amazing stories that I've heard over the years around the world. I've performed in Australia, New Zealand, all over the UK, and yeah, it's kind of beautiful that I keep hearing such similar stories, thousands of miles apart from each other, and seeing people connect on social media as well through coming to my shows that might not live anywhere near each other. That's the glory of something like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is the biggest arts festival in the world. You get audiences from all over the globe coming to your shows, and yeah, it's a real community. Comedy is a community, and I think when it comes to mental illness, community can be a lifesaver.
Well said, and I think that we're trying to foster a community here on social media through what we're doing with AXSChat, and sometimes we get a bit serious, and to be honest, I'm not that serious a person. I like to make the humour. Maybe always at inappropriate times, but then that's partly the neurodiversity kicking in, I think.
Well,
So,
comedy's meant to tread that boundary, though. It's meant to tread the
yes.
boundary between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And we're kind of the guards of society, of trying to test the water of what's okay to say and what's not okay. So
Yeah, no, I agree, but I found myself working in HR and wearing a suit, and so sometimes, yes, my close to the knuckle sense of humour I can sort of afterwards think, oh, really, I should have just kept my mouth shut at that point. So I'm gonna keep my mouth shut for most of the rest of this interview because I can't really see what's going on very well. So forgive me if I jump in because I get excited, but I know someone out there has questions and comments, and so I'll hand over.
And I'll take it, but I like I agree. I think humor humanizes us. And so I love that you're doing it this way. And there's so many misunderstandings about mental health and mental illnesses. And I was talking to a big corporation the other day, and we were talking about this topic, and they said many of our creatives that work for us, we have a lot of them actually that have bipolar, and they said, bipolar has been so misunderstood in societies, and we've seen people with bipolars, go crazy on television, and we've seen some real dark sides, using your word, related to bipolar, but actually people with bipolar are very creative and very artistic, and they're very innovative in the way they think. And and I struggle myself with mental health problems, with severe depression, and I once again, I appreciate the word dark because sometimes it feels like I'm going into a dark hole and I'm doing everything I can to try to stay out of there and eat right and all the things. And then of course when life throws stuff at you, my husband's walking a very, very serious path with dementia. My daughter with Down syndrome got very, very ill. So you have all these things being thrown at you, and you're sometimes finding the humor in it is the best way to survive it. And Juliette, I know before we started recording, you talked about the amazing pictures behind you. And I was just hoping maybe you would explain on air what you explained to us before the show started, because I just think it really captures what we're doing here. And I love that you made the courageous decision to talk about your life and your work through comedy. I just think that's really brilliant, and I really applaud the work that you're doing.
thank you. Thank you. So, do you want me to tell you about the paintings or the show, or which we go?
Yes. Well,
Both?
I think you should, if you don't mind. Yeah, both, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I'll come to the paintings in a second because they're right there, like two guards behind me. Well, I've done quite a few different shows over the years. I've sold out at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for the last 4 years in a row, and I'm going back there again with a new show this year. So tickets are on sale now if anyone wants to come. And yeah, I've done lots of different shows that always, at some point, talk about my either current experience or history with mental illness, because it's a part of who I am. I am who I am in spite of and because of my conditions. And the show that I've just finished a national tour of, it's my first proper Arts Council funded national tour. It was called Butterfly Effect, and it was all about whether kindness can change the world. So a couple of years ago, I had a really difficult year, and my therapist kept telling me to be kind to myself, and I kept thinking, I've got no idea how to do that. So instead I focused on trying to do small acts of kindness for other people, and kind of charted this quest of if you focus on kindness, then can you find more kindness? And it was really to celebrate a couple of experiences, one of which was that there was a guy that I was flyered up in Edinburgh back in 2012 who came to see the show the next day and then came to see my following show the following year. And when I flyer people, I like to chat to them, I like to get to know them, I like to recommend restaurants and other shows. And he said that the day that I flyered him, he had actually been planning on committing suicide. And the way that I chatted to him that day, he said in his words, felt like it was the first act of kindness that anyone had shown him in a really long time. He'd been battling cancer, he'd been going through a messy divorce, he was convinced he was going to lose his children. And he said, in his words, he then felt obligated to come see the show because I've been so kind to him. That's how I get them. I guilt trip them into it. And he then said that he found the show so uplifting that he changed his mind about his decision. And he still comes to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. He's coming again this year. He came to see me perform in Australia, where he met a new woman. He's still battling his health. He's winning and living an amazing life. And that inspired me to write this show. And for me, kindness has helped me a lot with my mental health. I have been a size 4 and a size 20 due to eating disorders. So I went from one to the other in around 6 months. I was first diagnosed with anorexia when I was 14, but before that had already, I can look back retrospectively and say that quite confidently I had symptoms of childhood anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, bipolar was diagnosed when I was in my teens, but because it went undiagnosed, I had food issues as well around the age of 7 or 8, so very early, but it was all, back in the day when therapy wasn't the done thing. So it then led to anorexia. Anorexia then led to me being sectioned under the Mental Health Act when I was 17. So I spent my 18th birthday sectioned under the Mental Health Act in hospital. And I had hallucinations whilst I was there due to a stress-induced psychosis. So the stress of being sectioned and not knowing what was going on. Naturally, my brain, I had audible and visual hallucinations for about a period of 2 to 3 months. And I then, after that, about a year later, went from a size 4 to a size 20 due to compulsive overeating disorder. Was very suicidal because of that, because throughout my teenage years I'd identified as an anorexic, at a time when nobody really knows who they are and you're still figuring that out. The one thing I knew I was anorexic because I'd been told that I was. So I'd somehow lost my sense of identity, because that's part of the illness, is it tells you that that's who you are, and gives you a false sense of achievement. And then I then struggled with bulimia for the best part of a decade. And I still struggle with all of those different voices in my head. I like to think of them as I say that that's different from audible hallucinations, but these little cast of characters in my head that my depression, my anorexia minx, and they're all still there every day. I have anxiety disorder symptoms still regularly, and obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms regularly, and I'm still in therapy. But this is all informed every show that I do. The new show that I'm doing is called Defined, and it's about how we define ourselves, and it's exploring the difference between the fake online perfection profile that we might put ourselves out there as, either on Instagram or Facebook, or for me more recently on dating apps, which has been so much fun. But I've kind of enjoyed, in a very strange way, enjoyed the experience of putting my imperfections right out there and saying, what might be seen as imperfect, but actually for me, they're things that really are the most beautiful aspects of myself, like being sectioned under the Mental Health Act. If a guy on a date can't handle a woman who's been sectioned under the Mental Health Act, then he can jog on, because he's missing out on an amazing story. But yeah, I'm kind of exploring the difference between what we put out there publicly and what we keep for ourselves, and actually real world human connection is something that I think you can get on social media, but I think social media can be a bridge to making those real proper human connections. So that's going to be the thing for me with my shows and my audiences, is that I've got a whole bunch of brand new friends right in front of me, and they make it all worthwhile. They're incredible, and I would love for them to turn around and look at these other people around them and go, I've got a whole new potential family around me right now if we just connect a little bit more. So that leads me to the pictures behind me. So yes, my pictures, I was on tour with Butterfly Effect, the show about kindness and whether it can change the world. I won a couple of awards and stuff, and did really well. It led me to perform in Bristol, which is where these paintings are from. One of my shows was in an art gallery, and all the art at the gallery during that exhibition had been created by mental health patients, inpatients and outpatients. And these three behind me, if you can see all three of them, were created by mental health patients. Sadly, I don't know their names, but I do know the process through which they were created. And I've been an inpatient myself 5 different times at 5 different hospitals, clinics, NHS, and otherwise across the country. Kind of replaced my education in some ways. In some ways, I think actually the stuff I learned in those clinics and in therapy has been as important, if not more important, than the stuff that I might have learned at school. But these paintings, so the gallery owner explained to me that the patients were able to select the colours that they used, and they kind of layered them up in a jar, in a kind of receptacle. So the paints were layered up in these different colour orders, so they could choose the colours and the order within which they layered them. Then they stood out in this courtyard with these huge canvases and chucked the paint across the canvases, and the way that it all lands, the way that it dries, is all down to the weather, the wind, the sun, the rain, the trajectory, and the lesson. The holistic lesson was that we can control some aspects of our lives, and we can control ourselves. We are in charge. We can change ourselves, but we have to let go and allow external influences to affect things sometimes, and know that that's okay. It will still be beautiful in the end. So I got these in September on tour during a time that was really difficult for me. Last year, a lot changed in my life. My relationship of 7 years ended. We were meant to get married last year, decided to break up instead, which actually is so much better for both of us. And yeah, there's been family illnesses, and a friend unfortunately passed away, and then my therapist passed away. But what doesn't break you does make you stronger. And everything in my life, being sectioned, all of the inpatient stuff, all the therapy, all of the difficulties last year, it's made me stronger. And I know I have fortitude and I can get through anything. And if I can say that, then anyone can.
Wow, I think we all stand a little bit silent, just continue to listen.
I did talk for a really long time there.
No,
Is that our
was
time?
amazing. No, it was amazing. Amazing.
That's super. That's why I invited you on, because I knew about the story, and it's fantastic, and I think our audience are going to really connect with this.
Because I was listening to what you're saying, and also looking at the way how you collect stories and bring something to your own gigs, and this is a kind of a, let's see if I put it in the right way, a kind of a sociological storytelling, grabbing those things and then bringing them to your stories and bringing them on stage. And somehow, we're not, even if it is not something that, this is not really what we call a deep sociological study, it brings a lot of the deep of the individual stories that people relate. So I think it can be something really, really powerful that people can really relate with what you are saying on stage.
Thank you. I think it's important. Stories are vital, and the number of stories I've heard through doing shows and also through the mental health treatments that I've had, stories keep us buoyant. We learn from stories, and myths are built to teach us lessons, and they're like therapy, really, myths and mythology. And for me, comedy is an extension of that. Comedy is not therapy. That's something that I keep getting asked, still get asked in interviews all the time. I don't ever talk about something on stage that I haven't yet dealt with in therapy. Therapy is therapy, comedy is comedy, unless my audiences aren't laughing, in which case I will call it therapy. They usually do laugh, they're lovely. I think it's really important to use creativity because for me, it's a natural way of coping with day-to-day life. So whether that's writing it down just as a diary, a lot of people use diaries. I often use my notepad just to write down any thoughts, whether they be poignant or funny, but it's the funny ones that I want to hold on to, because having had so much serious stuff happen in my life, I'm kind of done with that. I need to focus on the fun, and that's the beauty. You can't appreciate the sun without having some rain, and for me, if I nurture the comedy and that part of me that wants to seek out the fun, then it helps me survive the rest of it. So it's a natural inclination.
So, is there anything that you can tell us in the way about your creative process, the way how know you look at, you talk with people, you search for stories, but then how you build the stories in a continuum that like you did with Butterfly, how you create that continuum that allows you to put kind of a storyline that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, with my previous shows, what I've done is I've kind of applied journalistic ideology to it. So I do a lot of research around whatever topic it is that I want to talk about. So my first solo show was about careers, and I went on a quest to try to realise all my childhood dreams. But that was a way of me also telling the story of how hard I found it growing up. The second show that I did was called Look at Me, and that was the first show that sold out and won an award. And the second show that went to Australia. But that one was about appearances and whether our appearances are who we are, because having been the same girl in so very many different bodies in real life due to eating disorders, I wanted to see whether I could find confidence within a different body. So I got an Arts Council grant to mean that I could use prosthetic makeup to change the way that I looked in even more dramatic ways. So I spent a day being a 90-year-old lady, or at least appearing to be a 90-year-old lady, a day inhabiting a seemingly male body, a day wearing the hijab, a day dressing quite provocatively, and a day revisiting my obese self because I wanted to try to find confidence. And we filmed it with hidden cameras. So with all of those, I did a show about decision making as well, about whether our decisions affect who we are and whether one decision really can change a life. With all of those, I interviewed lots of people about their experiences regarding that topic. So for example, the appearances show, I interviewed lots of models and people with facial ligaments or physical disabilities, which is how I've met most friends on a pool of interviewees, interestingly. Then more recently with things like the kindness show and my current show, I've been connecting with people on Twitter a lot. So my research has been through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and inviting people to be a part of my research through social media. I like to collate all of that and think about the show a lot. I like to take a long time over my writing process. But then in terms of structuring it, I tend to like to think of it in a classic kind of storytelling narrative of setting out some quest element at the beginning and then going off on the story. But ultimately, it's following the funny, and no matter what, it has to be the funniest outcome possible. So whatever jokes that are both truthful, my shows are always very, very honest and very truthful, but also have the desired effect of making my audiences and myself laugh. Then that's following the funny, finding the funny, is what stays at the root, especially of my more recent shows. And the rest of the creative process is actually the most vital part of it, is being in front of an audience. So, for example, on tour, I started workshopping into the past show, the Butterfly Effect kindness show, new material that has now become a kind of staple material that will then be the bedrock of my next show, the one that's going to be performed this summer, previewing the summer and then premiering at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And yeah, the getting it out there in front of audiences is the only way where it's a living, breathing, creative arts comedy. Like it's both performance, but it's also connection, and it is reportage, and it's honest, and it's researched for me. But then it's also just fun, and you can only have fun when you're actually up performing, and it kind of zinging around the room between you and the audience, and you responding to what's happening in the moment. So it's almost like a mindfulness thing of making sure that you're present and in the room with those people who are listening to you and responding to how they're responding.
No, I have a friend in Australia. His name is Paul Colmer, and he works in technology, but sometimes after work or during the weekends, he does stand-up comedy. He's not a professional, but he likes to do it. Uh, what did you find new about yourself when you started? Is there something that you can tell us?
What did I find out about myself? I when I first started performing, I realised that my nervousness, my anxiety disorder, would often get in between me and the audience, and they would think that anxiety was because of my lack of confidence in myself, which is not the case. I have quite a great deal of confidence in my ability and in my material. But it's taken a lot to get to a point where I'm like, I can stand on stage and give that appearance of I'm in charge. Don't worry, we're good here. We're okay. I also realised I learned about myself that for me, I like it when my comedy's truthful. Like I know quite a few comedians who kind of tell white lies or stories just for the funny, but for me, reality is the most hilarious thing possible. So yeah, I think I've also learned that connecting with an audience and finding, like, they're my family. I love my actual blood family, but they don't come to my shows. I found my family that I've made for myself through doing comedy. There's so many people out there who they kind of get to know you in quite an intimate way. They get to know a certain aspect of you on stage, but then the people who become your little pocket family, so your social media connecting family, they're there. Like when I was on tour, if I had a day when I was really struggling with my depression, I'm thinking of one specific day that I tweeted and Facebooked and Instagrammed and just said, honestly, I'm really struggling. Anyone out there, just get in touch. And I was overwhelmed with the amazing response from people. That's what I mean when I said comedy is a community, not only for the performers backstage, but moreover for me, it's about the audiences. And I think audiences being at the center of everything I do, like, it's all for them. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Edinburgh this year, just to hang out with my family again. That's a lot of information.
That's
But it's
okay.
great. Yeah, it's great information. Go ahead, Neil.
Well, I mean, I think to, obviously encourage people to go and see the show, because I'm the only one that's had the privilege so far. If you can send us the links to the videos of your stuff that you were doing before with the dressing up, because I've seen that and I think we'd love to share that, because I think that's great. I particularly like the granny dancing.
They're out. I have trailers on YouTube that are
Yeah,
available publicly.
perfect.
So if you wanted to check them out, then there'll be a new trailer that's about to be launched. In fact, I just got sent the final version just before I came to chat to you guys. So that'll be for the new show I'm quite excited by. It's quite fun.
No,
Fantastic.
If they are around 2 minutes or around that time, I think it will be interesting to share them on directly on Twitter to promote the Twitter chat.
Yeah, absolutely. The new trailer should be ready. That would be the one that I would recommend sharing the most. I think you will like it. I know it's not what you've seen, Neil, yet, but
No, that's cool.
It's got a new aspect to it that I think you'll appreciate.
Fantastic.
But it's exciting.
No,
It's exciting watching you as you've taken your experiences of your life, which have not always been easy, and you've put it together in a way, in a very creative way, that is changing other people's lives. I applaud those efforts. That's really a beautiful story. I mean, even the one story about the gentleman you mentioned, sometimes people get so scared and so hopeless and so overwhelmed, and to think that you touched his life so much that you actually changed his life, and you changed the life of all of the people that love him and all the people he was going to meet in the future. I mean, bravo, bravo. And bravo
Thank
for
you.
having the courage to do this. So
Well,
it's
honestly,
pretty cool.
like I thank you very much, but I have to say that the fact is, in that moment I had no idea what he was going through. So it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm gonna help this guy.
Right.
And that was partly why I wanted to do the show about kindness, was that nobody really knows. Like, nobody knows the times, like, there have been moments in the show that I've mentioned somebody else being unexpectedly kind to me, and they had no idea how difficult a day I was having. We never know what
No.
the battles are that other people are fighting.
Right. Especially, it seems like it's more intense than ever before. I know, of course, in the UK, we're dealing with all the Brexit stuff, and in the United States, we're dealing with some very interesting things at a leadership level of the United States, to say the least. And it is extremely stressful. And we see suicides in the U.S. with our children. Suicide is the number one cause of death now of Americans between the age, I believe somebody said 14 to 18 or 13 to 17, but that is a tragic thing to say. That is horrible. And we're seeing kids 9 to 11 committing suicide. What? It's horrible. So we need work like you're doing, work like we're doing, to really change and say, no, hold on.
I think it's really important to focus on unity and uniting people, because we're always going to have differences. There's no two people
Yes.
are going to have exactly the same opinion about everything. But when you're in a room full of people who are laughing at a comedy gig, then everyone is united, at least in that one moment. In we're all laughing at this joke, at the butt of
Right.
whatever this joke is, and for me, like, that's the most important thing. I don't want division. I've had enough division in my own psyche, let alone in my actual life. So I want to unite people as much as I possibly can, and also to empower them, because I think in today's society, I know I feel fairly powerless a lot of the time. So being able to remind people, no, you actually have a hell of a lot of power. We often feel overwhelmed by all of the things that are going on worldwide, globally, existentially. If we just focus on what we can change today, whether that be just being a little bit kinder to each other, or whether that's turning around and seeing a brand new friend next to you rather than a stranger, then those are things that can have real huge change if you just focus on each individual positive action.
And I also think that we have to have the courage to talk about these things. I remember when my husband was diagnosed with dementia. At first, I didn't talk about it because I didn't want to dishonor him by talking about it. And then I thought, how can you not talk about it? And I actually talked to him about it, even though a very common thing he says to me is, now, he says this to me all the time, and I used to correct him, I don't anymore. He'll say, well, I didn't know that. I never saw. We were playing a game yesterday where they would give us a clip of a movie and you would guess something about it, seen it. And my husband kept saying, I never saw that movie, which he did. I never saw that. And instead of saying, yes, you did, don't you? I just say, I know. Well, you know what? You should watch it because it's really a funny movie. But where I find I can truly connect with him as we walk this pretty scary journey is through comedy and through music. Those are the two arts: comedy, music. That's where he's still there. My husband has a real smart aleck sense of humor. So does Neil, by the way. So I appreciate that humor. Antonio's got a good sense of humor too, but humor connects us, and being kind. I tell my daughter that all the time with Down syndrome. It's like being kind is just it's a gift you can give to people because you don't know what people are walking, and then having the courage to talk about your journey, especially when it's been really hard. Your journey sounds really hard. It sounds hard.
I have a lot to be grateful for, though, a hell of a lot, and gratitude has also been a big help for me, getting me through. But you're so right about, like, being brave enough to offer up information. Like sometimes it's brave enough to ask questions, but sometimes people are too scared to ask questions and don't want to upset people. So sometimes it's actually empowering to offer up a bit of information without being asked. Although unsolicited information is also not, it's a balance we found. But luckily for me, with the comedy shows, if you get up on stage for an hour, then people are kind of giving you permission to talk for an hour.
Yeah, no, I think absolute, and it is a release for the audience as much as it is for the performer. I just want to revisit what you were saying about your Twitter family and your social media family. We've all found that the community does really come together and support people. There's a lot of stuff out there where people are saying, "Oh, social media is terrible," there's all of these awful things happening. But there's also a really positive side, and people do care, and people do want to reach out. They do want to be kind, and when you give of yourself and you talk about your own vulnerabilities, actually people will come, and the support that's out there is really impressive. I've noticed just how much people do want to help and do want to be part of making the world a better place. So I'm a believer. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience and all of the stuff that you're doing with us today. I'm sure that the new show is going to be a great success. I'm looking forward to seeing the new material. Need to thank Barclays, Microlink and MyClearText for helping us keep the lights on and doing what we do and keeping accessible. Looking forward to chatting with you on Twitter on Tuesday as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. We love your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ditto to you.